Hello and welcome everybody to another ChipNRat edition of Kerbal Space Program. This is not a final design at all, by any means. But what's going on is I'm trying to make a vertical takeoff jet aircraft. And then, as I get better with the design and the iterations, obviously they'll start to look better and more clean and operate a little bit better. It's not quite a VTOL yet. It's not a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft yet. I would call it a short takeoff and landing. So what's going on here? We'll walk through it. So obviously I have my control surfaces right here. Obviously cockpit here, air inlet here. I had to put a second one on top because this one wasn't quite enough to feed all of these engines and this Panther afterburning engine. Obviously landing gear, and then I just built this out as a fuselage. It's just a couple of these bicouplers and adapters just to make it wider and to kind of put this in the center here. So to do the tilting motion, we've got a little alligator hinge. And these fuel lines are just because the way these are connected, they're on little plates here, little structural panels, so they don't have fuel connection without this bicoupler or without this fuel duct. So the cowl, what this one does, as we open up our hinge and tilt this down, it tells these jets to increase their thrust. So you're flying along, fat, dumb, and happy. You want to land. You tilt the rear jet, the main jet, downward, providing a vertical thrust. You want these to also activate so that you don't flip over, ass over face. Got these two pointed a little bit forward here to kind of stabilize it when this is pointing slightly that way. Just provide a stabilizing I guess reverse thrust. And then we've got this little guy that's providing just a little extra vertical thrust to keep the nose up. This whole thing weighs about 8 tons with the wing on. So to get there, we need 80 kilonewtons, more or less. As we go through this, the thrust from these engines goes up a lot quicker than this comes down. That's just been experimental, me just kind of moving these around, playing with it until I've gotten to the point where I'm at now. It's a little unstable, and this is a problem in real life too. VTOL and STOL and STOL aircraft, when they're at these super low speeds, they are very unstable and have a tendency to flip over one way or the other really easily. So here's our little test. As we activate this, we can slowly push it forward, and you can see the throttle on these front ones goes up really quick. So if we wanted to increase that to 30, that's about where we'll start to lift off, and you can see it's really taking the weight off those back wheels, and we're essentially neutrally buoyant right here. We are just skidding along like we're on ice. But first we'll do a STOL test, just to demonstrate where I'm at design wise, because I do think it's also kind of cool. So we'll put it down to about here, increase our throttle. Oof. No. That's not where it was. So 35 meter per second takeoff speed. Oof, almost. Oh my goodness. It's like a rocket. I'm not hitting the runway here. But look at that. Wow. Those things have a lot of power in them. They flip the crap out of this. We just want the back one right now going high enough that we don't flip over from the front to the back. And it's doing a pretty good job. Okay, so let's ramp it up just a little bit more. Alright, let's see if we can bring it down. It's a lot harder than it looks. Okay. I think I've mostly got it under control. That was pretty sweet. Alright, so here I've started my second iteration, or my third iteration, and I put a cockpit there and a couple of these small service bays, and I'm lining up a couple of structural plates that I can put on 4 engines for the front to provide that forward and upward thrust from the front side. And the idea was here to create something like the F-35 that has a top opening area and a bottom opening area for the front fans. Now I'm just adding in some fuselage, some structural bits, just really kind of creating the structure of the plane to go along with those. So those 4 frontwards engines are going to be the same little turbofans that are on the original plane that I just demonstrated. And they're honestly going to provide enough thrust because this thing's going to need, about 80 kilonewtons. I tried to keep it about the same weight. So those 4 frontward engines can each provide about 20 apiece or 18 apiece. You can see I'm just going through some iterative design on the wings here, just trying to create a nice smooth shape that really doesn't, look too bad and clash too much because I'm trying to focus a little bit more on the aesthetics. Struggling a bit there with the control surfaces. And now we're getting to the real meat and potatoes here of this plane, or of this jet, that hinge and that Panther engine that I'm going to shove in there into the body a little bit to just make it a little more conformal and a little more aerodynamic. And now I'm messing with the direction of the travel that I want it to go. I want it to swing down so it provides upward thrust, as well as those forward front engines. And then to kind of create that shroud effect, I've just used a little cargo bay, and I'm going to limit how much it can open just to make it look a little bit better on this plane with that jet pointing downward. There you go. I see I've limited how much it can open there. And I'll create a Cal 1000 little program here in a second that's going to kind of go through the motions. And I'm going to create 2 little programs. One of them is going to control the front 4 little turbofans and their thrust, and the other one's going to control the angle on the jet on the back. And that's so I have more control over, how far up and down and forward and back my thrust is going. Just to give me a little more control, because that was the big problem I was having with the first iteration, was that I would lose control fairly quickly, and I didn't have as much say over whether I was pointing forward or backward, other than using the wing control surfaces in my elevators and my ailerons, which is not ideal at slow speeds because those aren't really going to provide that much lift. So here I am running through the program. It's really just trying to figure out how far I want that engine to go down at any given moment, and how far I want it to travel in total. It can only go 90 degrees, which is a downside to this hinge as opposed to the alligator hinge that I had before. And I also want the door to open up as that engine comes down, uh, and points downward so that it's not really clipping through. And I'm going to mess around with that and get it just the way I like it. So it looks like I've got it the way I want. And now I'm going to do the same with the front four and also their motor controller and their power coming off of those four engines. So that's what we're going through right now, is opening those front doors and also spooling up those little turbofans in the front as we open the doors, so that it provides that upward thrust on the front so that you don't go and flip over tail over face, which is obviously not ideal. Of course, we want to be able to control this separately from the rear turbofan, which will be on the main engine, as well as the angle on the main turbofan, which is on that other cowl controller, because we want to be able to have more minute control over whether we're going to flip forward or even backwards, head over tail. So that's what we're going to run through, and it actually goes through quite a few iterations of this, so I'm not going to show all of the crashes that happen. I'm just going to go through and show, after this build process is done, a couple of semi-successful runs. I never quite got it perfect, but we'll continue working on that. So now I've got it all lined up, and I'm just making sure I got everything the way I want. Make sure I have my pilots in there, because this one doesn't have a automatic controller, and I do want pilots to be able to control this thing. And last but not least, we've got to attach all those turbofans to the fuel lines, which I almost forgot. But there we go. We've solved that problem, and now we've got fuel going to all the different engines on the aircraft, which is kind of vitally important. Alright, we're going to pump it up basically right up to 70, and at the same time we're going to throttle our main engine. Almost nosed into the ground, but we do have a takeoff. So we've demonstrated the vertical takeoff, and now we're going to transfer into just complete forward motion like a real jet aircraft or jet fighter. You can see it's pretty nimble, can turn pretty well, go fairly fast and fairly slow. And we're going to bring it back in here to demonstrate kind of hovering, which is essentially the next step in doing a vertical landing. We never quite got into doing a vertical landing, but here you can see we've pretty much stalled it out. We can go forward and backwards, and you can see we're going very slowly across the ground, and we can go any way we want in real, basically really slow. I hope you like this vertical takeoff and landing jet demonstration, and we'll continue to improve on this. So I hope to see you all in the next video.